And we're rolling. Hello, everybody. I have back with me Ann and Weldon Warren, and I have to tell you, I already told you this off screen, but I wanted to tell you again. People literally called
And
me
we're rolling.
so thankful that somebody like you exists in a time of strife, and how wonderful and refreshing it was to see a couple that can work together, live together. I mean, you're just amazing. And then you're out there healing the world, sharing what you know. Thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you.
You're
That's so
welcome.
kind.
It is our passion.
Yep. And we had several of your listeners reach out to us directly too. So that was very exciting and thrilling. So
Yeah, well, good. Yeah, you mentioned that. So apparently there was one of the ladies that had the colitis issue.
yes,
And
yes,
you guys not only helped her, but you connected her with somebody that has the same issue, right? That
yes,
has
yes.
healed?
Yes. Healed, with using the bone broth and the GAPS diet and all of that. So yes, yep, he is healed. Yep.
And like I was telling you guys, it's so wonderful to not only one, get the information, two, have hope, but three, to have that person there, that tangible something that makes you believe you can do it too.
Right, a cheerleader. In fact, as we get older, it seems like God is moving us in more of that direction and letting our younger generation, our son's going to take over the company, and another young man that is our adopted son. But as they do like the labor of the work, we're still that voice, because I think that's what's missing. I mean, how many times do you get on the phone and you're talking to a robot? You're just talking to a machine. And it's like, please, it's a quick question. Just any person could answer this question.
So, and I'm going to add, Carmen, that it is part of our MO.
Yeah.
This is our passion and our ministry. So we tell people, 99% of the people that we encounter, that you cannot email us or call us too often or too much,
Right.
because this is just what God has called us to do.
Yep.
And if we can do that one person at a time, the ripple effect of that is geometric and so powerful to help all the people, in the US and the people in the world. Most of the rest of the world is doing better than we are on this front. So it's the people in the US that really need, they need some hand-holding to get them
Yes.
back into that groove of the way their grandparents cooked, the way their grandparents lived, the relationship of their grandparents. People stayed married longer in those generations than today. And so we're not advocating that we're marriage counselors, but it is that it's a ministry that when you feel good, you behave better.
Yes.
And so
Yep.
it's a very circular system that's
Mhm.
all interconnected.
Yep.
And so they just can't call or email too much.
Right.
And you don't get that same attention with Butcher Box from Australia.
Fair.
Right, of course, of course. I'm glad you said that. If I wanted to get onto the November delivery for Dallas, am I too late or am I good still possibly?
You're good still. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. 'Cause
deadline is-
I wanted to get my daughter's dad some a box or something.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I will do that afterwards.
Okay.
And then the other thing that I was going to say is let's start with love then, because I like that segue. You brought up like, and that's such a great point. If you're feeling good, you have this very open heart. And when a heart is open, it looks for all the beautiful things rather than a closed heart that's frustrated and finding everything that's wrong. I would love to hear y'all's love story. How did you guys meet? And what do you think has sustained your marriage?
Okay. Well, we're both going to probably choke a little bit on this, choke up, because it's emotional, but it's really just trusting in God.
Yeah.
So I'll start. She can dive in wherever she wants to. But I was a money manager in Dallas, corporate job, but we were a small firm and we handled airline pilots' pensions. As I said the first time, it's a complicated pension. And all I did for the firm was manage the money. And so I had a very singular job, and I met with our customers maybe for 30 minutes, where you hand them the results of the last year's returns, how well we've managed money, and that money's set up for the kids' education and for the next car they're buying and for their next vacation. We kind of did it all. And so it's a really nice little conference room that we have. The pilot and his wife, or the wife and her husband, the wife that's the pilot and her husband might be coming in, whichever way it is. And I get my little 30 minutes with them, and I go back to my office and said, okay, I did my job. I'm looking at my computer, which faces the window looking outside. And there's no other way to describe it except if you've ever had the Holy Spirit come over you, it just, you really can't ignore it. So I literally was talking to my computer. I was going, okay, look, you really want me to do that? You want me to do what? Like, I don't know that I can do that. But anyway, what the feeling I was getting is what I'll share next. I got up out of my chair, went back to the conference room. The head partner in the firm was in the restroom, so I knew it was going to be a little while. And so I said, okay, Don and Barbie, God has told me to come in here and ask you this question. So they're looking at me like with that pregnant pause, like, God told you to come in here. I said, okay, maybe it's the Holy Spirit, but I think you, Don, as a Delta airline pilot, you know someone that you're supposed to introduce me to. And these poor pilots.
That is wild.
It is wild. It gets wilder. Hold on.
Yeah. So, Barbie is a little bit, the wife is a little bit less
offended.
They
were very offended.
They were offended. Don especially, poor guy, he gets hit on all the time. Everyone wants a pilot to introduce them to one of their stewardesses or a flight attendant. Yeah. So he found that offensive. He told me he found it offensive. And I said, what can I say? If you're led to do this, you do it. And he said, well, I'm going to talk to Bill, who was my boss. And I said, so be it. What can I say? Right. And he said, well, who knows? So anyway, they finished their part of the meeting for the financial planning. They shared the story with Bill. Oh. Bill walks into my office and he said, like, what the heck did you just do? He said, I'm of the mindset to just fire you now.
Now. It was that offensive. It really was.
To a pilot, because that happens all the time. And he said, you really stepped down to a low in doing that. And I said, I just followed,
And Don and Barbie are very, very godly people. Very, very godly.
But they are best friends with Ann. He's a pilot. He's based out of Delta. So he's based out of Georgia, Atlanta. And
he was living in Dallas at the time.
But living in Dallas. And that's why he was our client. And so they kind of thought about it on the way home.
They used to live in Florida, which is where I was living at the time. So they moved out of Florida to Dallas.
And that's how they knew Ann, through a Bible study.
Yep, we went to church together.
And so they thought about it, talked about it on the way home, and no one came to mind. And they said, this is not good for Weldon. This is, we're going to make sure. Anyway, they woke up the next morning and both looked at each other and they said, Ann.
And what's so strange is they went from being offended to actually really searching.
Right, to actually knowing who it was.
I think they prayed about it, and then they they woke up, and the Holy Spirit convicted them.
Yes.
And so they called my boss and said, okay, don't fire Weldon.
Gosh. But then came the whole, I lived in Florida and he lived in Texas. Right. And so it was, that was so many years ago. Email had just started being a thing. So we were doing the You Got Mail for a while. That was fun.
Yeah, that's funny. The Tom Hanks movie.
Yes.
I was just
You Got Mail.
It reminds me of.
Everyone had an AOL account. So that's what we did. So we communicated over about a 2-week period. We just said, okay, we're going to take this kind of slow,
about
just
a month.
Get to know each other. And it was all by email and a few phone calls, but email was easier. And
we didn't know what either one looked like.
We didn't have a picture. We decided not to have a photo. And so we got into that a ways. We did several personality tests like the Briggs-Myers.
Wow.
I know, it's pretty funny.
We did one through our church, my church, that had a separate one. So we did at least 2 of those.
Yeah.
And it showed that, at least on paper, we were more compatible than not.
Right.
So we took it to the next level. I know a bunch of airline pilots. And so I said, I'm going to fly American. I know all these guys and I can get to Florida. And it happened the week that we wanted to meet was the week that American airline pilots went on a strike. They called it a sick out. Instead of a walkout, they sicked out. So pilots would fly into DFW, walk off the plane, and not get on their next flight to go, let's say, to Florida. And so I knew the sick out had come, and I went that morning to DFW airport
He booked the earliest flight in the morning he could get on.
The earliest flight, and I'm going to guess there were 9 flights that day to Florida on their little Super 80, which only holds like 100 people. So it's not a big crowd that they can even fly on that flight. And so one after the other of these planes came in. I'm on standby because I didn't make a reservation a month ahead. I wasn't smart enough to do that. And so it wouldn't have mattered anyway. I'd have been flying late in the afternoon to get to Florida, even later, so I could work that day. And so one after the other walked out and didn't fly the plane. And so it came down to the next.
Wait.
Okay.
So there were 2 young girls that were at the ticket agency early in the morning.
Ticket counter.
And he said, when the first flight got canceled, he said, can I tell you my story? So they just drank up this whole story.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is me right now.
Yeah. They just thought this was great. And so he thought he was going to have an in, but their shift ended in a way they went how many flights were canceled? Like
9, 8, all but 1.
Yeah. But the very last one. So, and another very much older lady in Weldon went up to her and said, can I tell you my story? And she was just, no, I don't want to know your name. I don't want to know your story. I've got the list. We're done. You're not getting on.
And after 8 flights were 6, 7, 8, you get deeper and deeper onto the wait list. So I knew I was done and we were not getting on the flight, but I had to go through the whole day to make sure. And, I came in and I got on it. I'm on the wait list, but everyone that came in on the plane that was going to continue to fly or who already had a prior reservation was ahead of me.
Right.
So I was probably 5 or 6 or 800 deep in this wait list.
Right.
And this poor lady had a hard day. She didn't want to hear my story, wasn't sympathetic, didn't know my name. And so I finally go to the payphones, called Ann and said, there is no way I'm going to get on this plane. So I'm just giving you a heads up. We'll try again. Who knows?
They even had closed the doors.
Yeah, they closed the doors on the last flight. And I never even took my ticket that was not a ticket. It wasn't to get on yet. Standby.
Yeah.
And said, well, this isn't going to happen. And I was on the phone with her. So this is confirmation. My name was called.
So his name was called. He goes, wait, they're saying my name. I've got to go. I'm on the flight. They reopened the doors. They said, go. And he goes, don't you want my ticket? And they're like, just get on the plane.
And the lady that had been there wasn't there anymore. She was gone.
So it was just another new person.
And I didn't give anyone my standby ticket.
So
I just walked on the plane.
If the plane would have crashed, nobody would have known he was even on there, which was interesting.
It's just funny way that God works.
But you had to sit in the very last row next to the bathrooms.
And next to the engines.
But because had been all day long, like all these people were getting bumped is the right word. They were letting the alcohol flow freely to keep it. With a lot of alcohol. So he sat next to some people who were pretty happy people.
So they had brought they are a band, and maybe it was a 5 or 6 piece band, but they did not play traditional instruments. They had I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of this, but you can turn it upside down and it sounds like rain.
Oh, yes. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And then you turn it back up. And
I forgot what it's called, though.
Yeah.
So
and a harp. There was a mini harp, but there was a harp.
Very unusual instruments.
Very unusual instruments.
So they were in the seats in front of me and they were all having a good time. And I said, look, I'm on the plane to go meet this woman. I cannot imbibe too much.
Right.
And so everyone was getting into the story. Our airline flight attendant was very empathetic. And so she went and put together a gift for me to give to Ann once I disembarked. So it was a bottle of two glasses, a bottle of champagne,
A split. It was a split of champagne.
and flowers, and said,
They had roses. I don't know. They had roses. There was a couple roses there. And
so we all disembark. And of course, I'm the last one to get off, and everyone's just leaving. She's at the airport. Ann is.
This was when we could go to the gate. So I was
I remember those days.
So I was standing, near the gate, just across the aisleway, but standing there and just waiting and waiting. All these people came off and just wondering, when is he going to come off? And I hear, and everybody's laughing because they've all been drinking. So as it's winding down, there's people with these wild instruments walking off and talking about the guy who's going to meet the love of his life. And
you can hear it?
Yes. And I just panicked. I'm like, oh, what have I done? What am I doing here? Oh my gosh.
Could be a mistake.
Just in a complete panic. When he followed, he was behind them and they were walking down the aisleway. And so he saw me and he went to give me a hug, and I immediately just turned my cold cheek to him like, okay, yeah, I just don't know about this. And he goes, hey guys, come here. And he called them back from down the aisle and they serenaded us right in the airport. It was so
that's
wild.
how we met, because we didn't know what each other looked
like. Really, God gave you flowers, God gave you champagne and a serenade.
And God gave me
a seat on the plane that you shouldn't have had.
I know, the seat, exactly, that didn't exist.
And where that flight attendant or gate attendant went,
I know,
we never found out, but she was not there.
And she never knew your name.
But my name was called out loud.
Right.
To go through those doors because they were already closed.
It was crazy. It was wild.
We don't even know who did that.
Yeah.
And so we met. And
so anybody out there remembers this story. We want to know what happened.
Exactly. Oh my, it was a good time.
It was a good time. And because we didn't know what each other looked like, I sent her some photos.
Oh, this is funny.
That had to do with Christmas and Santa Claus, where kids sit on his lap.
Weldon had a daughter, and so there's about 4 photos, but the very first photo was of her sitting on this Santa Claus lap. And I knew he had been born and raised in the country. He was a money manager, but he had this agricultural background. But I didn't know anything he looked like. And so when I opened this up, the way Tess was sitting, she kind of covered the red suit, and it was a red-headed man with long hair and a really big beard, not a white traditional Santa. So I looked at it and went, oh, wow, this is what he looks like.
She thought I was the guy with the red beard.
I thought he was this huge, large person with red hair and red beard. I know, it was hilarious. But then I flipped through and I saw, and anyways, but he never did. He never saw, I never sent photos. So he didn't know what I looked like until he got off the airport. And there I was.
So then the question becomes, you went from like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming, to when did you warm up? When did you finally go?
Well, it was about a 30-minute car ride back to my home from the airport. And it was very late at this point. But it was during that time that all that peace came back, because we had gotten to know each other over the month on phone calls and emails and all these things. And so it was like, oh no, this guy is a gift. So, yeah.
And so was it like love right away?
Pretty much. So
funny.
The way my girlfriend Barbie called me first before she gave my number to Weldon and said, okay, so there's a single dad who, and she told me the story a little bit about it. And she said, he's a money manager. Would you mind if he reached out to you? And I was a single mom at that time too. So I said, I was thinking he was going to help me with my finances. Literally, I had $24 to my name. My ex-husband didn't pay child support at all. And so there was, I was always struggling, always.
So she was going to use me for financial planning.
There's 2 single parents. We're both Christians. I'd be able to help me with my budget. I don't know. But the moment we started talking, I got off the phone. I was giddy, just giddy.
I love that feeling. I remember the last time I fell in love, like I'd be driving down the road and like, you don't care if someone's merging or stopping in front of you or not driving right. You're just so happy giddy.
I know, right? Yep, that's what that was. Yep.
Giddy's
So,
the best word for that. That's the
yes.
perfect
And so
word.
another part of this story is I knew she was living in Florida, but had moved from Michigan.
Right.
Her dad was the head partner in a CPA firm, a national firm, but based out of Michigan, now living in Florida. And so we had to kind of get to know each other.
Mhm.
And I forgot where I was headed with
The
this.
country club.
Oh,
thing?
the country club.
Yeah.
So she was raised in a country club environment.
Very city. I was very city. Very
I
country.
remember you guys talking about that last time.
Yeah.
And she didn't overemphasize that. And so I said, well, I'm from the country, and this is before I'd had my stroke. And so this is like, I'm from the country, so I think we'll have some things in common. But eventually what we would tell people was she was raised in the country club environment, and I'm going to take the club out of the country club.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put her on a ranch.
Yeah, no,
She did
that's
very
so,
well.
it's so perfect. I love it. And so I want to hear some of those stories because I think I told you last time one of my favorite books that I ever read to my kids was Harrison Me, and it was the juxtaposition of the city kid showing up at the ranch. That was just so funny.
Yes.
But I also was curious before we went there because I want to stay on that God, like that Holy Spirit line. When when you know that you're in that space and you're trusting and having faith in God, you have no idea how it's going to turn out. And you even at one point faced, okay, I might lose my job because I did what the Holy Spirit told me to do. However, everything worked out great and you got the woman of your dreams. Has that same thing replicated in business ever? Has it ever with Holy Cow Beef? Has there been a time where you've made a righteous choice that didn't appear to be good and then it ended up wonderful? Was
Oh,
there anything like that?
multiple times. I mean, just recently, the drought of this summer, especially in West Texas, but all of Texas, just hit us so hard. And to be a grass finisher and knowing the nutrition that when you finish on green or grass, no grain, it would have been so much easier to feed our cattle this summer than and to not stay true to what God had asked us to. So some of our steaks we're coming now, we've got good grazing now, the steaks are getting better, but some of our steaks just weren't hardly even marbled, but the nutrition was there, the flavor was there, and trusting God that our customer base is going to ride through this drought with us because we're not willing to compromise and feed, and we want it to be the most nutrient dense food available. So that's the most recent one. But you want to talk about when you were in the hospital, how God put it on your heart to do Holy Cow.
Well, and I thought we might have already touched on this, but I knew, I'd met the gentleman that lived in Southwest Fort Worth, and he's the first, what they'll label as grass-fed, grass-finished producer. There were only 3 or 4 in all of Texas in 2001.
Right.
So not many. And so what I'm not sure which part of the story of
She just wants to know how God has influenced Holy Cow.
Oh, well, just it's every step of the way.
Right.
We're not going to deviate. We're not going to feed grains. We're not going to finish on grains. Cattle will eat a little bit of grain just incidentally because if a stalk falls over, they would eat that, grain head, the plant head that has grain on it. But 99.9% of their calories are coming from protein. And that's the way the bovine digestive system is designed to work. And we talked about this the first time we visited, but God put mostly water on earth. There's the 1/4 of the earth, whatever it is, that is land. And of that land, most of that land is covered in something green that lives off the sunshine of the sun. Just think of this, God's plan. I'm going to give earth sunshine at least half the day, or most of that half of a day, to grow the green things that cattle, bison, ruminants need, goats and sheep that need to live and to do well. And then man, is going to do their own gardening and such, but they're going to have animal proteins available from the cow's milk, and cheese to beef, pork, chicken, the eggs of those chickens, all of that is part of our Garden of Eden that
Right.
we
So
have now abused so much. I
Yeah.
mean, our ancestors lived this way. So probably prior to 70 to 80 years ago, you couldn't sell an EKG in the United States because no one had heart attacks. I mean, literally, the inventor of the EKG comes from Europe.
Right.
He came to the US and tried to sell this to the medical community, and the hospitals didn't need them because no one was having arterial sclerosis and heart attacks.
Mhm.
Well, we do now. We went from the most,
Healthy.
the healthiest of all the developed countries, we were the most healthy.
Mhm.
And so that 70, 80, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and today we're the most unhealthy.
Yeah.
And if you don't think there's a coincidence between that and industrialized food and our food companies, chemical companies that are in partnership with our ag companies to make more money off their machinery, equipment, and then all the additives in our food, and now we're unhealthy, and now the pharmaceutical industry is living off of our poor health.
Yes, absolutely. So
There-
I have a quick question going back again because I love these God stories. So when there was the drought,
Mhm.
was it just like not even a question, like not even a blip? Like, okay, we're sticking with our plan because God told us to? Or did you actually have some wrestling with it and be like, should we finish them with grain? Should we pray about it? I'm just curious. I love seeing how different people operate in their faith.
Well, and we're not trying to punctuate for this emphasis, but I think she's going to say, and I'm saying, we never even thought about it. We just,
That's what I guessed.
Well, you have
if you
to.
ever
So-
give in once, if you compromise once, it'll be that much easier the second, the
Right.
third, and before long, you're no different than a feedlot.
It's just walking by, not by sight, because the site was pretty grim. We had just gotten in contact or in a partnership with Beef Initiative, and the very first ranch we visited was in Colorado, drop dead gorgeous.
Oh,
The
yeah.
second ranch was in Georgia, drop dead gorgeous. And they're
Right.
like, let's go to Holy Cow, and we're like, are you for real? We are not drop
It's
dead
a
gorgeous.
Texas ranch.
I know. Oh my goodness. So we definitely, but there's been a couple times when you, for the sake of the animal, need to feed something. And usually for us, it's always hay. We're
Right.
at least blessed that but we were aware that the hay was getting short, and that come January, if we didn't have a break in the weather, trying to truck hay from North Dakota and South Dakota, the expense was going to break our company, really.
Right.
So, I mean, that was discussed.
Wow, see?
What are we going to do when we can't get hay? But then, God blessed us with rain. And so you just keep walking. And I'll tell you, we did touch last time about when Weldon first got sick, and he reached out to his family and said, okay, I want to move out here. And they all said,
Yeah.
resounding no.
Right.
And they thought it was just a, fad. They thought grass finished beef was a fad, and they didn't want any part of it. So, but God had obviously placed it on Weldon's heart to come back home, to come back to West Texas. Our customer base started in Dallas, Fort Worth. It's still our strongest market. And so we stayed, we stayed in Graham area probably a little bit longer than we should have. And again, he placed it on our heart. You've got to go to West Texas. You've got to go back home. So regardless of our family, we made the commitment and decision. We're going to follow what God's asking us to do. And when you do that, things open up and it's easy. But we came out to West Texas realizing we're going to have at least 2.5 hours drive back to our processing plant, and then 2.5 hours again to pick up the meat. So we were aware of all the logistics being so much more difficult, and also being out in West Texas. Amarillo is huge feedlot country, and Texas Tech invented the feedlot. So we didn't anticipate having a West Texas market as far as people wanting to buy our beef.
Right.
We just knew God wanted us out here. And
we came out here to live thinking we were never going to have any West Texas customers.
Yeah, we really did. But just that whole, I'm going to walk by faith and not by sight thing But there's someone you would probably love to have on your show, Dr. Ben Edwards with
Okay.
Veritas Medical. And I can share that offline with you. But he was a doctor, just an MD, medical doctor in post, third generation, his grandfather, his father, him. And he was so efficient at meeting with patients in that 7-minute time frame. You know, insurance gives you 7 minutes to meet with your patient. He was meeting with them in 6 and 5 and getting in and getting out, until one little old lady actually grabbed his collar and said, I don't want you to increase my prescriptions. I want you to heal me. And he's like, this is all I know to do. And he's a godly man, big time Christian. And he wrestled with that. And
For a year.
yeah. So his story, so long, he found a mentor who was able to, anyways, we'll let him tell that story.
Okay.
But he ended up moving up to Lubbock from Post, 30 minutes away, and worked for a corporation. They brought natural health in-house. So he was starting to become an integrative functional medicine doctor that still could prescribe. And he found us. I don't even know, that's another God thing. How did he find us? So one of his first seminars to educate people to all that he had begun to learn in the healthcare realm and about eating, he said, and look what God has done. He's recently brought Holy Cow Beef to Lubbock, Texas to be our beef supplier. So that was a total God thing. And with his practice, as it bloomed, so did our West Texas customer base. And so now between Amarillo, Midland, and Lubbock, it definitely rivals our Dallas Fort Worth customers. So that was just, and that was totally by faith. We didn't work it.
That is the perfect example of how God operates.
It is. It really is. Because
he always over delivers. You weren't even hoping for that business.
Right. We weren't. And
I flip and love that. And I think too, I think people, especially in these times, need to be able to have faith in a way that is unconditional, because the conditions are so horrific. But
Right.
if you can hold it, so then the next question I have on that same line is, one of the things that I get like really torqued about is, one, hearing these stories. I love them. But
Yes.
second, when I pass an initiation or a test, like
Yes.
I know that I know that I know I just passed it, and it's like, ah, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yes.
it's such a cool, because what's happening is you're affirming and you're creating that template in your brain that this is reliable.
Right. Right.
You need just get past. But it's funny because God always invites you up higher and higher.
No, it's so true.
Well, so speaking of that, Carmen, I'm going to share some animal husbandry with your audience.
Please.
And I was raised out here, so I understood it then, but it had been decades since I had finished an animal before we went to Graham. And then coming out here, the silver lining to coming to West Texas, where there is a lot of glyphosate, there's a lot of row crop farming, you know, God bless them. They're trying to make a living.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that the big chemical industrial complex has them by the cojones, basically,
Yeah.
and won't let go, that their practices are what they are. But anyway, we were in Graham, and we get about 35 inches of rain a year there. We still bring cattle in from there. That's where my cow herd was, you know, and where we were raising our animals. And then the decision to come to West Texas came in, and it's like, we found a partner, someone that we introduced ourselves to him. He had a ranch in Corsicana,
Further
and
east.
even further east, 50 to 55 inches of rain a year. And we're going, oh my gosh, you're drowning in water over there.
Yeah.
And we have no water here.
Right.
And then the light bulb went off of how God is working in this, that when you can take an animal, let's say a weanling, a yearling, a young animal, from the pastures of East Texas, where it rains so much, they're rumen, and I'm going to quantify it in the terms of footballs. If their rumen is 4 footballs in size, the rumen of a West Texas cow has a rumen the size of 1 football.
And the rumen is the stomach, for anyone who doesn't know.
Yeah. So
Okay.
the reason it's so large with East Texas cattle, and in even not quite as large in the Graham Throckmorton area, is they get more rain. So God in his wisdom knows the grasses in the East Texas and Possum Kingdom area are 80 to 90% water and 10-15% nutrition. So there's this big basket to hold all this forage that they're consuming to get that 10% protein.
Got it.
But fast forward to West Texas, where we get 12 to 15 inches of rain a year. Their rumen is the size of one football. But that's sufficient because it's 90% protein and 10% water. So they get as much nutrition in that one football rumen as the cattle from East Texas in 4 rumens. So now the blessing of our business, as we outgrew our own ranch and the number of calves we could have to get them to wean, to be weaned and to grow up to be, part of our meat business, is that we needed a way to do something in a faster period of time. And we began to pick up ranchers that wanted to partner with us. So we call them our animal protein partners.
Mhm.
And we'll buy an animal from them that is maybe only 3 to 6 months away from being finished instead of 30 months from being finished.
Right.
And we can bring them in from East Texas or the Graham area, and they might weigh 1,000 pounds, and bring them here, and they can gain 4 pounds a day off of our grass because it's so strong, and they have such a big
Because they need to
basket.
fill the basket.
Right. They're hungry.
Yes,
But I would have
yes,
never thought of that. My dad taught me that way back when I was a kid.
yes.
But so instead of keeping animals on our ranch for 30 months, we can participate with our partners and have an animal on our.
Awesome.
Yes, God was so good.
That's like a body of Christ story too.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It's a body of Christ with animals, but yeah, it's
And
still
we pay
people working together.
And we
Mhm.
pay our ranch partners more than they can get from any other market they go to. So they benefit. It's a win-win situation.
Mhm.
But of course, those ranch partners of ours, they're antibiotic free, hormone free, what we'll call NHTC. So they're all natural.
Right.
That we're the perfect fit for them.
Yep.
And so that's how we source our animals, is from those kind of ranches. And they're on board with us, and we're
Yeah.
on board with them. But if you'd asked me when I first moved to Graham, how are we going to finish 700 animals a year
Right.
the way we do today?
Right.
I'd said, I have no idea. And I didn't then, but God worked it out.
Yeah.
But that's what's so cool about it. And he gives us the grace to handle whatever it is as we're going.
Yes. Yes.
My friend that started Bochi's Place, you can't really see it, but it's superimposed on here. It says Bochi's, and it's a safe house for women who have been sex trafficked. And
Mhm.
she originally started her ministry to be one of these people that holds the family together, teaching women how to, really just shepherd over their family and to create beautiful homes and great smells and, dealing with even the hard things like someone cheating and how it's possible to overcome it and all kinds of stuff. So this was her ministry. She was sure of it. And I'm not talking a year later, she was beginning this, and she didn't even know she was beginning it. And she goes, had God told me ahead of time, you are going to run a safe house, that's going to be your mission,
Wow.
I would have said no. I would have argued with him all day long. I want to do the candles and
I know, right?
the manners. I want to teach manners. I want to do, and,
Yes.
and then now she's got this really beautiful freedom center and women that are, they're changing their lives, and it's so cool. So
So cool.
yay, I love these stories. Okay, so now let's go into what we were talking about earlier with the country club girl living on the ranch. I would like to hear a couple stories about that.
Well, so I had never shot a gun. Every good Texas woman has shot guns. I had never done some of these basic things that when you move out remote, which our first ranch house was very remote. We were in a finger surrounded by a river. I mean, you couldn't see the river, wasn't like beautiful or anything, but there was, when you're that close to water, you have so many more critters.
Right.
And of course, what God put enmity between the woman and the snake. And so a
Yeah.
lot of the stories are snake stories. And
Let's stick with our Bible theme.
I know, right? We raised rabbits. That was the very first animal that our kids raised for 4-H. And
Wow.
so my youngest son, who's pretty absent-minded professor, that's what I mean. And the older boy would always like pull him off before he stepped on a snake, or, get him out of the harm's way. So he was always kind of the absent-minded one. He goes, "Hey mom, look at that snake." It was just he and I out in the rabbit tree. And it was at least 4 inches in diameter and 7 feet long and bright yellow. And I thought, well, it was like an Amazon snake. I'm like, what the heck? So I ran inside to get the gun Weldon told me to use. And on the way out, it fires. I'm like, holy crap. Luckily, the other kids were in the house. I'm kidding you not. So then I figure out how to cock it again. And anyways, I did successfully kill that snake. So that was good. Lo and behold, its mate was in the chicken coop. They're giant chicken snakes. And so we went in there to get the chicken, but Weldon was home then. So I was able to run back home and say, there's a big snake in the thing. But anyways, there was another time I went to trap the boys again, like, Mom, there's a rattler, but it was a baby. And so baby rattlers are super poisonous.
I was just going to say they're more poisonous than the big ones.
Their venom is stronger.
Yes. So I knew Weldon wasn't far, and I was like, I'm not going to shoot a rattler because if I miss, I don't know what it's going to do. So I put a bucket on it and had the bucket on it, and Weldon came home, lifted the bucket, and the rattler is gone. So now I'm like, oh no. So who knows?
It crawled out from under.
It found its way.
Oh yeah, I would have guessed that. I'm not a country girl, but
Yeah, so
I know those critters can get tiny. Oh my gosh. And
goodness.
isn't it so true that all hell usually breaks loose when the husband's gone? Something always happens and they're not there.
Yes, it was crazy.
So a quick little summary of us living out on the Brazos River. In about a 15-month period, the two boys probably killed 10 rattlesnakes and copperheads combined.
Yeah, the copperheads are really bad.
Not water moccasins, which we would have thought we would have seen more of. But God was always with them. JR pulls Tim, our youngest son, back just before he steps on something venomous.
Yeah.
And yet the kids got a lot of exposure to ag, and yet we never suffered any major,
Yay.
catastrophe.
Yeah. Scorpion.
Oh my gosh, that is a blessing. And can they harm the animals too? Like if a cow stands on one or gets near one, will it bite them?
Yeah, and it's a problem. And then of course,
But
generally they'll recover, but
Yeah.
a lot of times you have to put them on antibiotics, which takes them out of our program. So
But the animal will survive more than likely, but it has been injured.
Yeah.
And there'll be some repercussions from that swelling,
Yeah.
especially on the nose.
yeah, if they get bit
If
on
they
the
get
face.
there, the snout, as we call it,
Mhm,
or the
mhm.
legs.
Yeah.
But we never lost an animal
No.
to a poisoning like
No.
that from a bite.
Yeah, we were blessed.
Yeah.
Blessed.
Oh, what a lucky thing that is. And so I also want to talk about the rabbits. So first of all, what's a rabbit tree?
Oh, okay. So the rabbit tree is where they live. So we had, I don't know, 10, 12 cages inside a small building. So you call that the rabbit tree, just where that's you build.
Where all the cages
Yes.
are.
Yes.
And they-
And you show them, it's a great animal for young children to learn animal husbandry and responsibility. But rabbit droppings are really amazing fertilizer, right behind chickens. Chickens are the best, rabbits are second best. So you'll find people raise rabbits just for their droppings, just so they have organic manure. So it's a really,
I
yeah.
never knew that. Okay, so my daughter's cats, one of them does not do well with regular cat food, and it does really well on rabbit food. Like,
Oh,
a lot of them eat chicken or
Yes.
beef or whatever. And
yes.
for some reason, hers don't do well unless they have rabbits.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, if all these food shortages and you can't get, I go, we might have to raise rabbits for the kids.
True.
It's really easy.
So, can you just give me a little rundown on it? Like how do they do it? What do they do?
Well, they're very content to live in these cages. They don't need to jump around a lot. Our kids would bring them in the house and let them jump around, and that was fine. It made it more difficult because they'd get attached to them like pets.
Yeah.
So, but they're very content to live in the cages. You have a wire bottom, so the droppings drop down to the ground, and then you can collect it or not, doesn't matter. But I mean, there's rabbit feed and water, and it's very simple. And putting down a rabbit it's hard, you know. You probably want to talk to that.
We showed our kids entered into all of these 4-H contests.
Mhm.
You can enter a meat rabbit or
Right.
you can enter a show rabbit.
Right,
And some of them kind of do both. They cross over,
right,
but they learn everything there is in the world to know about rabbits.
right.
And then they go compete at the district level, the county
All
level,
of it.
the state level.
Mhm.
And so our kids were very, very involved in 4-H, and it served them very, very well. We had some great 4-H leaders.
Right,
We had some great scout leaders too, but
right.
4-H, and so our kids, particularly 2 of them, had that mindset, and it got them both a full ride scholarship to either A&M or Texas Tech
Right.
because of all of their activities
Yeah.
in 4-H and how well they did.
Right.
And doing well was partly due to having a good coach, and then of course having the right environment to do this. So we did these, they go to these contests, like they go to the county. If they win, then they get to go to state. If they win there, they get to go to nationals. And our daughter went to nationals twice. If you win state one time in a particular environment of what would you call that? Like they were on a grass judging contest.
Right.
So our daughter knew 70 grass plants,
Right.
Plants and grass. They at 5 different levels of growth. So
Yes.
emerging growth, growing for several months. So at all these different levels of growth, they have to be able to identify 70 different plants. And then they go compete with their neighboring county teams. Then they go to state. Then they finally go to nationals. And so the team that won state the first year was from North Dakota. So our
Nationals, they won nationals.
one nationals. I'm sorry, one nationals was North Dakota. But
We came in
because
second. Our daughter came in second.
our daughter came in second, but her team won state. So if you win state one time, you can't repeat in that same category. So they switched over to soil identification from plant ID to soil
Yeah.
ID.
Mhm.
So they're learning all about the soil,
Mhm.
and what a great thing
So
to
good.
become an agronomist,
It is so good. It teaches them how to study well for college. It's a really great college prep when you get your kids competing at that higher level in these things. And back to the rabbits are a very short project, like 6
Right.
months, you're done. I mean, so the rabbit has matured. Now, some of, like Weldon said, some of the show rabbits, as opposed to the meat rabbits, you can have them for a year or so, but after that, they don't show as well. So you really, it's a great short project for kids. Just learning like, okay, do I want to do this? Do I like this? And all that. So the rabbits are super easy, super fun for young kids to get involved with.
And to conclude our daughter's story, having a great coach, they won state again in the soil
Yeah, they did.
identification.
Oh, that's awesome.
Got to go back to the nationals, and the same team beat them for first. So
Yeah, North
Aaron's
Dakota
team
won again.
came in
Darn.
second.
Those darn North Dakota. As a matter of fact, there's somebody in the chat that said, I'm in North Dakota. I started my herd with 7 head of cattle, still working on the best breed of bull to use.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's so
So-
cool.
Is that a question or just a statement?
It doesn't have a question mark, but
Okay.
do you have an answer for it?
I don't know.
Williams?
I think it's based on the climate up there and the grasses that they're growing. They have great summers, where they go up the mountain to graze.
Yeah.
And then when the cold weather comes in, they all bring them back down. One of our ranch partners grazes cattle over toward Gunnison, Colorado. And they have a summer grazing program, and then they bring them down the mountains. But the Angus are always good, whether it's black or red or a cross thereof. You can have Hereford mixed in with that Angus, and you'll call it a Baldy. And so there's many different composite breeds. And typically in the animal world, when you have a combination of genetics, you get the best of both worlds. My single favorite composite, I'll just share this with your listeners, kind of hard to duplicate, but it's got Brahma and Hereford mix 50-50, and they call it a Brayford. Then they'll breed that Brayford female to a Red Angus bull. So that's genetic marker 1 for the Red Angus. That calf heifer gets bred to a second Red Angus genealogy or genetic trait type of from that particular ranch. So the R.A. Brown Ranch is one of those 2 Red Anguses. The first was the Beaver Ranch, and it's not here in Texas, but R.A. Brown Ranch in Throckmorton is. So now you end up with an 8th Brahma, an 8th Hereford, and 3/4 Red Angus from 2 different sires. And those were the best animals we have ever finished, and all the thousands of cattle that we have finished. The Brahma makes them a little bit wild, but through this genetic composite, they were the calmest of all the animals we've ever.
So
you
nice.
could walk up to one that you've never walked up to before. It wouldn't even move. You could just start scratching the knot on its head, and feed them a little treat. They had a loose skin, so it was kind of a parasite control mechanism.
Right.
They have dark eyes, so you don't get pink eye the way the Hereford does.
That's really cool.
So at every level where it could go good or bad, it went good.
It went good. Yeah.
And that's just the mix of genetics, and they call it composite. It's just a wonderful animal to finish.
Yeah.
You could ride them like a horse. You just go out there and get on them.
And if your listener is asking like which breed finishes best on grass, it's the English breed. So the Angus is one of those, but any English breed will finish really well on grass. One thing Weldon used to, when he was choosing bulls, I remember you telling me that he would look for bulls that sired low birth weight, but that then they bloomed later. So they had really large heritage, but low birth weight. It's just easier on that young heifer, that mother. So anyways, those are just different. I don't know if that helps your guy or not.
No, it's awesome. So I know that we're getting to the end of the hour, but there was, I think, an important question, and I think it's a little controversial, but I really wanted y'all's opinions on it, because I see the way I believe Satan's operating in the food world. And I believe it's truly evil, and he is twisting, he's got that Leviathan twist on it, on everything. And I know that there's a lot of people that are just angry about people who eat animals, or people who, don't eat bugs, whatever you want to say.
Right.
I don't know the difference. To me, a conscious thing is a conscious thing.
Right.
But please share your philosophy on, eating animal, and if you've run into problems with people, attacking you in any way because you have made this choice. You know what I'm saying? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So for us, it's the Bible. I mean, it's just, they've eaten animals, and God from day one said you should have dominion over them. For us as a rancher, Weldon, in fact, he gets very teary-eyed when he talks about the cattle walking off the truck, going their last day, into harvest. We call it harvest. But because that animal, we have done a good job stewarding that animal. We are part of Global Animal Partnership, so we're actually certified to have really good animal welfare. For those people who question whether that's, again, the feedlot is a horrific place. That's not the right way to treat the animals.
I agree.
But in my opinion, these animals are here for that purpose. This is their purpose. And they feel that when they get off. They turn around, Weldon will tell you about our dairy cow, turned around and looked at him, and it's like a job well done. She did her job. And so that's how we view it as ranchers. This is what these animals are here for.
And so let me take this a step further, and then she can continue.
Okay, please.
But we just really believe in what this Global Animal Partnership, animal welfare. We don't have open water tanks where cattle can go and get a drink of water any time of day, all day, every day of the month, every day of the year. We use water troughs because we let the tank go dry, so that when we come out on 2 legs as humans and turn on the pump and all the cattle come to water, they get to deal with us, the human being. We're not horseback, because if they see us on a horse, we're no different than just the horse.
Right. They see you as a four-legged animal if you're on a horse.
And the horse is already four-legged, so they don't really see you.
Right.
But when we're on two legs, they take notice that we're there.
Yeah.
We walk around them and we're gentling their spirit. We're trying to take the anxiety out of the animal and human relationship. And they're never going to be our best friend and go and get in bed with us. It's not that. It's that we want them to trust us to do the right thing for them in their life. So they always have fresh water. We have mineral. We have decent grazing that's really strong protein, 90% and 10% water. So every bite they get a lot of nutrition. But our animal welfare program is we don't have a single hot shot. Nowhere in any vehicle, the barns, anywhere.
What is that? I don't know what that is.
It's an electrification tool that you can hit an animal with, and it will shoot a jolt of electricity, and then it's giving them a shock. If we have to do that to get them on the trailer, we've done something wrong in our animal husbandry protocol. If one cow just doesn't want to go in that trailer, which we've already loaded them in probably a half a dozen times as practice, so they hear the gates shut, they hear everything, see everything, smell everything. And so by the time they get on there for that last trip, their thought is, I've done this many times. My heart rate doesn't go up. When it does, the animal pumps a lot of adrenaline and lactic acid into the muscles. It's gamey and it can be tough. And so our animals are just like, okay, we're going for another trailer ride, you know.
To order it.
Yeah.
And so that's our animal husbandry. No, if
and they're not worked up when they get to day of harvest, because those two-legged animals at the processing plant are just more humans, and they're not overwhelmed by it. And I know there's going to be some people that will challenge us, maybe through your, reach out to you and say, God didn't create cattle to be harvested for our consumption. And I still disagree. And it's like, why would God do that? Why would God create an animal just for us to slaughter them and eat them?
And I tried
and yet he sent his only son for one purpose. And that was to die for our sins. And so he does that. He does send things here on earth for their sole purpose to ultimately end in death and the betterment of, for us, it was salvation. For this animal, it was for our nutrition.
And we've
God
dealt
so
with
loved his world.
We've dealt with PETA a few times, and so
they're crazy. I'm sorry. To me, I heard that they literally closed their kitchen in their office because somebody killed a cockroach or something. I don't know if that's a rumor. I don't know if it's a rumor, but it sounds up their alley,
So in my perspective, Carmen, most of the earth is water, the surface. Most of that, of what is land is in green. It's got something green growing on it, which is the only thing a ruminant should be finished on. So all of this plethora of green forage for the cows to eat, to become very nutritious in the sense of minerals and everything that makes them healthy for our consumption. But what God does want from us is good stewardship, good animal husbandry. If you're having to shock that animal, then you're really called to do it differently. And there's a wonderful woman by the name of Temple Grandin that your people should know. And she's autistic. And this is her gift to mankind, is how to build pens that are animal friendly. And she's helped our operation through her, what we've learned from her and how to move cattle. We don't have any square corners in a pen because they'll go stick their head right in that square corner and then they get frustrated and their heart rate goes up. They need to always be moving in a circular type fashion. And so there's a lot to learn from both sides of all of that, where people want to have better animal husbandry and yet know that meat is good for us to consume.
Yeah. No, thank you for answering that, because it is a thing that comes up a lot. And who knows? I mean, there may come a time, after Revelations, where we don't need sunshine or green food that feeds the animals, that does whatever. But until then, it seems like the most logical to me. Lisa D, who's one of the moderators in my my chat said we serve the animals and then they serve us.
That's
Yes.
exactly, that's beautiful. And that's exactly
But
how
we
we
don't,
feel.
we don't
Yeah.
abuse the animals and then expect them to serve us.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah.
Well, some people do, and that's
yes,
and I do see where that is a big problem, and it is something that is happening at a high level.
Yeah.
And so it would be nice if we could all go back to the 4-H the 4-H plan, you know.
Yes.
I
Yes.
remember doing 4-H as a kid. Now I didn't do any of that stuff. Mine was more just classes in the community, and I thought
Yes.
they were so much fun. And it was just fun to meet other adults that, you know, could pour into you in some way. And back then they all did. Like they weren't, everyone just wanted to be, you know, here, this is the sculpting teacher, this is
Yeah.
the weaving teacher, whatever. We learned all that stuff. And we need to bring that back.
We do. 100%. That's, yep.
I'm gonna get her up here.
Oh, goodness. This is funny.
Be the camera.
Ah.
Oh,
Our little Boston Terrier.
I know. I know.
She doesn't really like being up here. so-
No, she's
so cute.
oh,
Well,
goodness.
thank you both so much for coming. And one of the things that I was hoping to do, but you know, we ran out of time. So will you come back again?
We enjoyed
I'd
this.
love to have you back again. And
We learn as much from you as you do from us.
well, thank you. So, but yeah, I would like to kind of go through each one of the cuts with you on your website. So I think it'd be cool to go through the website with your interaction and your direction, so that people can see everything that you're offering and share with people and subscribe or whatever. Because my gosh, why would you not want, if you're going to eat meat, because I understand people don't, and I have no problem with that, but if you're going to eat meat, might as well know everything about it and eat the best, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we'll let Ann tell your audience what
Recipes.
what cuts we think are the most judicious. You want to eat the whole animal. If we could really go tip to tail, nose to tail on every animal for one customer, that would be ideal.
Mhm.
That's not really going to happen, but she can go through with the recipes on all the cuts. But those
Okay.
make the most sense for a big family because it might feed a family of 6, 2 meals.
Right.
And you always have a cooked animal protein already in your refrigerator,
Right.
ready to heat up.
Very key.
But we have a plethora of recipes that
Yes.
your community base can go to our website, and we have an area there for recipes.
Yeah.
And there are many, 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 many recipes, and grass finished beef cooks differently. So
Mhm.
our motto is slow and low.
Mhm.
And then on steaks, medium rare.
Right.
You're going to cook it to where you eat that animal medium rare. All the red that's on the plate is not blood. It is myoglobin, which is cellular nutrition. So when you pour that out into the drain of the sink, your sink is now healthier than you are. So consume it. That animal gave its life for your nutrition.
Right.
And myoglobin is a great thing. There's no blood in the muscle
Right.
of animals.
Right.
It's all cellular nutrition. It just
Right.
happens to be red.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, I never knew that. Thank you for sharing that. That is so cool.
Myoglobin is
Also, I
the,
remember learning in one of my nutrition classes when I lived in Beaver Creek, young guy, he was just passionate about health, and he only fed his dogs and everything raw meat.
Right.
And he was explaining that as you cook the meat, you literally cook the enzymes out that help you break down the meat.
Right.
And so when somebody's getting something medium well or medium or, you know, well done, they're
Right.
literally making it more difficult for their stomach to, because they don't have the enzymes to help finish it off, which I thought was really interesting.
And that's 100% true. That's what we teach. That's why you want to eat the steak at medium rare. Hamburger, you can eat it that well done. I mean, it's dry, but that's already pre-digested for you because it's run through the grinder. So it's already taken a step of digestion. And the roasts that you cook for all day and they just are fall apart soft, same thing. They've cooked so long that is already partially digested
but
for
at a
you.
lower temperature.
But the steaks are where if you cook it beyond medium, it just sits in your stomach because you've killed all those enzymes, and it's just this thing sitting in your stomach. Anyway, so 100% true what you just shared. That's great for your listeners to hear.
Yeah, no, I was amazed. Okay, so one last question, just since you brought up the soft meats. What's your favorite thing to eat that you guys have, or maybe your top couple?
Hands, it's so funny. So we're the ranchers. We can have anything we want off that animal. And hands down, we both would say chuck roast, just
Okay.
hands down. And so it's low and slow, turns out fabulous every time. We always have leftovers. The second day, I saute onions and peppers, season it for fajitas, throw in the meat at the end just to get it warm. Super fast, super easy. The most delicious fajitas you've ever had. The third day, we're putting barbecue sauce on there. So it's kind of feeds us for a week. And it's just, it's hands down our favorite.
It's cut 2 inches thick.
Yeah.
So when it finally starts kind of falling off the bone and it's so tender, every bite is 2 inches
Yeah.
in length.
It's so
Perfect
good.
size.
It's our favorite roast, and it's on sale this month. So there you
All
go.
right. Well, I'm definitely putting that in my box.
Yes, yes.
And so then the next question is, how do you cook it? Can you just give us one? And is this recipe that you're telling us, is it on your website?
Yes,
Yes.
it is, but it's super
Okay,
easy.
perfect.
I'm kind of finicky, but I mean, anyone can use their crock pot. So crock pot works great, but I like my chuck roast in the oven, and I like an arm roast in a crock pot. And we can go into that next time when we go over each cut on detail about why I do it that way.
Okay.
But I sprinkle a little bit of either liquid aminos or Worcestershire sauce, and the Worcestershire sauce you want to use is Liam Parents because that is fermented. And so that's a good one. All the other brands are not healthy, not good for you, but Liam Parents Worcestershire is a good one that you can use. So you put that on. I sprinkle a little bit of garlic powder on it, literally, and then pour in a dark beer. We drink a lot. Weldon drinks a lot of Shiner Bock. So I do a Shiner Bock, and then I set it on low, and it goes all day. So I cook it 8 to 10 hours, usually starting at 8 a.m. and it's ready by 6 p.m. for dinner. On that like 200 to 250
I
ish.
was just gonna ask what's like low for you, because my oven goes down as low as 170. I wish it went lower because I'd like to dehydrate in it, but I can't.
I know, same. And that's what mine does too. But anyways, so I do about 200 to 250.
And the crock pot might not
just-
have degrees, but just turn it to low.
And I always do the way I cook it first. I mean, I've done some fun
You
things.
put it in a big roasting pan and then all that stuff kind of floats around, or do you do
Yes.
a small, tight fit?
No, not super
More
tight,
open.
because I do add potatoes, carrots, and onions. And
Okay.
so and those are my favorite way that to roast those vegetables. They're just phenomenal. And the onion adds such a great flavor to the roast.
And your
too, so,
customers could give you feedback after following this recipe
Yeah.
with a chuck roast.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bet that at least 75% of them say their family says that's the best we've ever eaten.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so we're gonna do the chuck roast challenge.
Chuck roast.
And I know at least one of my clients who like went out and bought 3 freezers now because of all of the people that we've had on the show. She went out first and got a half a beef, and then she shared with her family. Then she got a quarter pig, and then now she just got a whole pig. And she's
Good for her.
loving it, and she loves it. She really loved you guys. But I bet you anything she does this chuck roast. I bet you anything.
Good.
So I'll tell her that we want to hear. We want feedback for the next
Yes.
one.
Yes, absolutely.
And I have to share a cut with you that is a mix of 4 different things from our beef that is one of the healthiest things you can eat. Number
Okay.
1, bone broth is the healthiest thing all of your customers, your people can start consuming. Y'all were talking about it earlier. It wasn't popular at all 20 years ago, and today it is. And it's the most economical ounce of nutrition that they can consume.
That's fair.
It's more fun when they make it themselves because they have invested their TLC into that.
Oh,
and it's part of who they are then, and then it nourishes them. But the thing that you can use to kind of, the second favorite is what we call primal, and it is 70% of our 80-20 ground blended with 10% heart, liver, and
Ooh,
kidney.
my daughter would love that.
So you got 30% that's organ meat and 70% that's the ground meat, but it's our 80-20, so there's a lot of fat in there. So you're getting good, healthy, saturated fat, high in omega-3s, 3 organ meats, and you don't taste any of them. So Ann was a little bit sensitive to the flavor and odor of liver.
That's true.
I
And
love
so
it.
we came up with the 10, 10, 10, and 70. and you can taste it's a richer flavor profile when it has that liver in there, but in something that's a little bit spiced, like
Seasoned.
taco meat, seasoned taco
You
meat
don't
or
even taste it.
chili,
You don't taste it.
And it's
Right.
most of your listeners, if they will use our primal to make chili, the very first time they use this, I would bet 90% say it's the best chili they've ever had.
Yeah.
Like you guys have got me like, so the last, I would say 2 weeks, Carlisle and I have been focused on sourdough bread. We've never done it before. When I study something, I study it. I have probably watched 150 videos of just sourdough baking, all the different tips and all that. And we're like trying to collapse the bell curve, but they've turned out beautiful. The house smells amazing. And you know what's crazy is I have been sleeping better since I've been eating the home milled flour. There's
Wow.
something that's happening that's allowing my body to rest better, which is
Wow.
so strange.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I had been doing the CBD oil from the Pharaoh,
Yes.
and I really liked that.
Right.
But I was still having some issues with sleeping, and then this kind of finished it off. It was like,
Wow. That's
yeah.
beautiful.
Carmen,
That's
I don't know if
wonderful.
you do this, I'll just ask. Do you take magnesium glycinate
At
in the
night.
evening?
My
Yes.
daughter just got me going on that too, so maybe that's what helped too.
Right.
Yes.
She has me spraying mineral magnesium oil on my feet and
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Wow,
doing all
that's
kinds of
great.
stuff. Yeah, we've got to fix ourselves. I'm a big believer in heal thyself.
Yes, 100%, 100%.
Well,
So,
we do believe in supplements only because our food system has denigrated enough in the minerals uptake because of glyphosate being a mineral chelator.
right.
We're not getting the minerals our parents were getting from the foods that they grew and raised
Mhm.
back in those days. So we do need some supplementation.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Well, thank you both so much for coming. Thanks for everybody that's here in the chat. Also, I really do want to hear if anyone makes it. I know I'm going to make it. So we'll keep you posted and
Okay.
hopefully we'll have you back soon. Thanks
Yes.
so
Okay.
much.